probably agree on.
Yeah, the playoff team for sure.
So do you.
I mean, I tell you what, I don't think there was a more accurate state. And
if they struggle again, I mean, I don't think there's any way you can keep Alex Critch, but.
What's up, y'all? I'm Bud Elliott. That's Tim O'Malley. That means we're doing summer school. Notre Dame, Irish Illustrated, one of my favorite episodes, as always. Tim, welcome back, man.
Hey, thanks for having me on.
Dude, absolutely. Let's get into this thing. Another nice season for Notre Dame last year and just continuing to build for Marcus Freeman. What's the general vibe right now around Notre Dame?
Yeah, the only negative vibe would be if Notre Dame loses, then it's a negative because they know this schedule and people expect Notre Dame to go in as a 1-point underdog and beat A&M, which is a tall task. And then Notre Dame's going to be favored again all the way through. Now, that's often the case, and they usually stumble. But this schedule shapes up for a playoff run. It really shapes up for a playoff run with a 12-team playoff. It actually shapes up for a playoff run with a 4-team. Florida State at home in November. That's a great time to bring Florida State to South Bend. Yeah. At USC at the end of the year has always been a problem for Notre Dame. But, you know, if you look at USC's schedule, the time to catch USC is the end of the year because they have a arduous journey. I mean, you start with Michigan and end with Notre Dame and have everything else in between. That's not an easy schedule for USC. And other than that, it's that rematch game with Louisville in October, also in South Bend. That can be tough because Notre Dame is expected to beat Louisville, even though Louisville put it to Notre Dame last year. I don't think Notre Dame fans value that as much as they say A&M, Florida State, USC, Clemson. They don't play Clemson this year, but that's the type of game Notre Dame fans get up for. It can be sleepy against Louisville. It was anything but sleepy at Louisville last year. That place was lit, and that was. I remember we talked right before, and you had concerns for Notre Dame going into that game.
I mean, Jeff Brom just has that sort of giant killer history, and when he's in his bag as a play caller, it can just be a long night. I obviously think Al Golden is a heck of a DC, and Louisville's defense is kind of sneaky good. So I do want to kind of stick with that, actually, since you brought it up. Notre Dame only plays 3 teams with a Vegas win total of more than 7.0.
Yeah.
I mean,
I can't imagine the last time that could have happened. Now, part of that is, of course, they don't usually have Army and Navy in the same year at the same time as having 2 other group of 5 teams. I mean, you have 2 more group of 5 teams on that schedule. Miami of Ohio is a quality one. Chuck Martin coming back to South Bend for the second time. Northern Illinois is really struggling as a program. And then you have there's some teams that have trended down too that are on the schedule. I think if A&M was opening at Notre Dame, no one would think a thing of that game. Even though Mike Elko is a great coach and they have plenty of talent, I think it's the trap of going in. It's no longer a trap, you should know. But you're going into Kyle Field at night. It's going to be a crazy atmosphere. But you can't base, other than worrying about some point spreads and maybe some young guys having issues, you can't look at Notre Dame's veteran talent and A&M's veteran talent and think, well, they're just going to fold right there in that situation. So I think Notre Dame's the better team than A&M. I think A&M will be a really good team at the end of the year. It's tougher for Mike Elko to transition to this year than it is for Marcus Freeman in year 3.
For sure. Let me ask you a question on it, Scott. I really hadn't thought about it until now. What's your confidence level that Notre Dame is in the playoff if they go 10-2?
I think they would make it, and they would definitely be on the road, and they'd probably be that 11 seed where it's because it's not a great schedule. So if you lose to A&M, it matters who you lose to the rest of the way, I think. If you beat A&M, you'd really need A&M to be a very good team. If A&M becomes a top 15 team and you beat A&M, that is huge. Then though, who do you lose to? Because you certainly can't lose 2 in November to Florida State and USC. Maybe Louisville and someone you get in there. My confidence level is not high. Last year's schedule and the year before they would have been in without blinking. Absolutely. When you have Ohio State and Clemson and those teams on there. Yeah, it could happen. I doubt it would happen. You could find them. You could talk me into it though if you give me the 2 teams that lose. Like you lose to US. What if you lose to 6-5 USC?
And that's late in the year as well. Yeah, that's probably doesn't look great. I asked because when I look at Notre Dame's historical schedule strength, 10-2 they're in. Are they in at 10-2 this year? I don't know. It really would.
There's not a lot of teams that can rise up and have a 10-2 season on Notre Dame's schedule besides the 4 we mentioned either. It would be a major surprise if somebody has a great year that we haven't talked about on the schedule. Like Purdue, Georgia Tech. Can those teams really go 9-3 or 10-2 this year? That's a giant leap for them.
I would be pretty shocked if Georgia Tech does. I would be extremely shocked if Purdue does. If they lose Scorton and also Burks to A&M and Oklahoma respectively and go 10.
Right. Purdue has
Ryan
the we
Walters
hate Notre Dame angle going for them. That's the best thing Purdue has in that game.
Yeah,
It's at Purdue, they don't like Notre Dame. That's good.
It'll forever be known as the Ryan Walters Coach of the Year award. If
That's true.
with Purdue. All right, so where, if anywhere, based on what you've seen so far in spring and talking to your sources, is this team clearly better than it was last year?
Clearly better as wide receiver. That was a major weakness on the team last year. Freshmen started like Rico Flores, who has since transferred, and Jaden Greathouse, who is one of their better receivers, and Jordan Faison, who is a preferred walk-on lacrosse player, all started last year for Notre Dame. They are good players. They would not start for Notre Dame if you went to a normal Notre Dame team that had a pecking order at receiver. This year, they brought in 3 graduate transfers. Bo Collins from Clemson, who is about to join the program officially. He had to graduate from Clemson first. He was around some Notre Dame practices, but he's now joining the summer. So he really didn't get much work with Riley Leonard, and we'll get to that later. Jaden Harrison from Marshall, who I like to joke is 1-0 in Notre Dame Stadium because he was the kick returner for Marshall a couple years ago. He led the nation in kickoff returns last year. They like him in the slot. The problem for Harrison in the slot is they like 3 slots now on this team. And then Chris Mitchell from FIU, who I wouldn't say he had a great spring, but that happens a lot for guys transferring in. It's a little bit of a level jump, FIU to Notre Dame. He's a 1,000-yard receiver, veteran guy. All 3 of those guys help the team, and the best part is they don't have to start. Jaden Greathouse will start on this team. Jaden Thomas, if healthy, should start on this team. Jordan Faison spent most of the spring and currently in the Final Four playing lacrosse for Notre Dame. He was at practices, but he was rarely participating. I don't know how long that'll last in his career, but I'm sure it was probably a deal when the freshman came in that he's going to help the #1 lacrosse team in the country too. People love Jordan Faison. He's just fast and a baller. So there's 6 guys I named. There's a 7th player on the team. Deion Colsey has started games. I don't think this has ever happened in Notre Dame history, and it could only happen because of the transfer portal. They have 7 wide receivers who have starting experience. Can you imagine bringing 7 wide receivers who started now? 3 are elsewhere, of course, but it's just there's so much more now, whereas last year we got rumblings Sam Hartman was worried about the receivers in the spring and in the summer, and then we saw for ourselves in the fall, and it played out. We saw for ourselves in August, and it played out in the fall. This should be a very good group. It's not like it's a top 5 group in the country, but this is going to be a very helpful group for Notre Dame, the wide receivers this year. I think they'll go 7 deep. And that could include a freshman, Micah Gilbert, who's had a early enrollee, and he had a great spring.
I think it also speaks to the importance of scouting the skill set in a way. We obviously CBS carries Conference USA games, and so I've watched a good number of those FIU games. And quarterback play for FIU was at times lacking, and other times just non-existent. So like that, and Marshall. Last year, to be quite frank, it was also pretty poor. So getting the Marshall kid and the FIU kid, you really got to kind of watch what they do in the route and not necessarily what the result was.
Right.
For many of those games. I just think this offense can open up just so much more if you not even scared, but you have to respect what they're running out there.
Right. There's more speed of the wide receiver unit. People say that every year, whether there is or not, but there's more functional speed too. As you say, these guys can play with their speed. It's not some raw guy that runs fast. Like Jordan Faison might still be the fastest guy out there, but he's developed now. He's a developed wide receiver. I don't know if you remember, it was the highlight of the Louisville game. I think the announcers had no idea who he was. It was his first game playing, and it was game 7 of the season. He scored a touchdown on his second snap, and they go, I don't have him in my notes. And it was just, they literally said, we don't know who this is. And we only knew because we saw him in August. And this doesn't happen much with sports writers. We saw him in August, and we kept saying to each other, are we sure he's not like one of the best players on this stat? And it was kind of a cut down to the other receivers, but he's just a very good player. The receivers will be better. And Riley Leonard's running ability and toughness is going to help the offense too. The key is, I think everybody knows, Riley Leonard would be in the NFL if he could throw better. If he has arm talent and potential, he has to be more accurate, I think, for Notre Dame.
For sure. I know he was kind of bottom third, maybe bottom quartile in like PFF's big throw rating, but he was also in some of the sneaky areas at Duke really good. Like his sack avoidance numbers are some of the best since Anthony Richardson. And I think you talk to coordinators in the ACC, and we thought we had this kid dead to rights, and he just kept like slipping away. And that's sort of an underrated thing, but it's also a very sticky thing, Tim. Like you kind of own that stat, but like stats show that it's not really variable year to year. So if he's back healthy, I'm really excited to see what he can do with new coordinator Mike Denbrock, who I think I got to admit I was wrong on, by the way. Like when Kelly took him to LSU, like, I don't know. Like Cincy's offense wasn't great, but apparently that quarterback had at Cincy maybe was not quite as good as the NFL thought he was. So, and he made a Heisman Trophy winner out of Jaden Daniels. So,
yeah, this is his third stint at Notre Dame. Straight, he was there with Willingham and Brian Kelly, and now a third stint with leaving Brian Kelly to come with Marcus Freeman.
Assuming that Riley Leonard is 100% with the ankle, which I mean he's already back throwing by the time we were talking about on cover 3.
Yeah.
How much QB run game do you anticipate? I
mean, I think there'll be a healthy amount. I think it's key. I think it's key to maximizing his ability as a passer is that he is such a threat as a run. When you watch that game live, Notre Dame had a defense that was better than Duke's offensive line, and Riley Leonard gutted out yards running and throwing the ball. He would have been the reason, other than some inspired play by the Duke defensive line, Riley Leonard would have been the reason they won that game. And remember, it took a Sam Hartman 4th and 16 escape and Audric Estime 30-yard run thereafter to win the game. It was the ultimate trap for Notre Dame with Mike Elko coordinating that defense. But Riley Leonard impressed everybody on Notre Dame staff and everybody watching that one. I think that's the best version of him. You're going to have to rein it back. For instance, the A&M game, he's going to be running. They're going to need it. You're going to be reining it back a little bit at the end of the year stats when they're playing Miami of Ohio, Northern Illinois, Army, Navy, probably Purdue's on the road. Georgia Tech is a neutral site, of course, in Atlanta. Virginia comes in. That's not a tremendous defense. You have to worry about that much. You wouldn't think the way Notre Dame plays defense to offset it. But in the 5 big games, Riley Leonard's legs are going to have to be a huge part of the offense.
We talked a lot about the offense here, but the defense is still clearly better than the offense, right?
Yes, there is no doubt about it. Yeah.
I mean, Georgia, Ohio State, maybe Michigan. Am I in the ballpark if I think Notre Dame's like somewhere between like 4th and 12th-ish?
Yes, you are. I think there's 3 keys to this. Al Golden coming back for year 3 with all the and plus the veterans he has. That's 2 keys together. He has 2 graduate student defensive tackles in Howard Cross and Riley Mills that everybody was shocked they came back. He has a 6th-year linebacker in Jack Kaiser that Pro Football Focus loves that was the only linebacker to come back. He has the returning Bronco Nagurski Award winner at safety, who's the 2nd best player in the secondary because Benjamin Morrison is better than Xavier Watts. Xavier Watts had a better year. Up-and-coming corner Christian Gray may one day be better than Cam Hart, though I will say that Cam Hart last year was extremely underrated. And I always say there's going to be a drop-off from Cam Hart to Christian Gray, and people get really mad at me because they're like, well, Christian Gray's only a sophomore. That's my point. He's only a sophomore. He has to play this season as a sophomore. It counts what you do as a sophomore, too. But I think he'll be very good. He still has to beat out Jaden Mickey, who returns he's been playing for 2 years for Notre Dame. They brought in Jordan Clark, Ryan Clark's son from Arizona State, to be the nickel. They brought in Rod Hurd, a 27-game starter at safety at Northwestern, to start next to Xavier Watts. And I mentioned the starts for one reason. Al Golden's defense is an NFL defense. He brought in a veteran safety, a veteran nickel. He has veterans everywhere. They can run this defense exactly the way he wants. They're going to miss Javonte Jean-Baptiste, who was really a revelation from Ohio State. He was a much better player for Notre Dame. They got R.J. Oben from Duke as a pass rusher on the strong side. I bring him up because, again, Notre Dame scouted R.J. Oben going against Blake Fisher and Joe Alt, and they thought, we want that guy. So that's an automatic scouting advantage for Notre Dame. And then the Viper position, which is their pass rushing end, there's a 5th-year senior there, Jordan Botello. There's an up-and-coming guy, Boubacar Traore, who everybody loves. We've joked he's streamlined himself by changing from number 51, which looks odd, to number 5. So when you see 5 coming off the edge, you automatically look like you're a better pass rusher, no matter what. But it's an impressive defense. They lost Bertrand and Leafau, who had started for 3 years. But the linebacking core is going to be around Jack Kaiser. It's all young guys. It's going to be 4 to make 2 spots. And Notre Dame has become a nickel defense anyway. So I think Notre Dame's speed at linebacker, I can't say it's an upgrade because J.D. Bertrand had a really good year last year, but they upgrade in some ways. So J.D. Bertrand in space against Trevion Henderson and Ohio State on the pass route was a problem. It might not be as big of a problem for Jaden Osbury, who's a guy from Louisiana coming in. Might work at nickel, might work at linebacker. So it's a defense that's going to be fun to watch, but it's got 7 veterans that are out the door next year, and we're going to have an opposite conversation when we talk next May or next June.
You mentioned Clark from Arizona State. Chris Cartman of our Arizona State site does Sun Devil Digest does a tremendous job covering Arizona State. And I recall like every single week I read their practice reports, and it's always like Clark was injured and unsure if he'd play. Like, was he healthy in spring? And if so, how did he look? Because he was a kid I always kind of wondered about, but he never seemed to be healthy at Arizona State.
Yeah, it was interesting because we got that word of that too, and he missed the first practice we went to, and immediately we all jumped on like, oh no, here we go. But he was in the rest of it. He barely played in the blue goal game, but that's what guys do normally. Javante John Baptiste, who I mentioned last year, he just oddly didn't play in the blue goal game last year. I think guys don't play in spring games because if anything's wrong, you're going to hold them out. And those have become rough because they're on TV and you can't show anything anymore. At least in the old days, you had to show up to scout a team in their spring game, but they don't show much in those. Jordan
Some
Clark
teams still do that.
Right. I know. So they have they have something called the Jersey scrimmage that Marcus Freeman brought in. Maybe Kelly did it, but Marcus Freeman's made it kind of famous. It's the week before the blue goal game. And for the first time we got to watch it. It's a real scrimmage. They go at it. And Jordan Clark had an outstanding first half in that game, blitzing off the edge and in coverage. So then when he didn't play in the blue goal game, we didn't bat an eye again. But Notre Dame fans have really yet to see him because that's what they got to watch was the blue goal game. So they'll I think it's a tall task to be better at nickel than Thomas Harper was last year for Notre Dame from Oklahoma State. They brought him in as a graduate student nickel, but Clark I think will fill the role well.
So looking back to the offense here for a second, when is the last time you had this much confidence in the Irish quarterback room?
The room, this is the best room. We were walking out of a spring practice, and this is really kind of ripping on the past a little bit here, but I said to a couple people, I've never left a spring practice where we didn't have to make excuses for how two guys look so awkward throwing a football. They all, CJ Carr is the true freshman early enrollee. He throws the best ball. I know people will say Riley Leonard does. CJ Carr throws the best ball. Kenny Minchie, who's the third string, might throw the second best ball. And Steve Angeli started the Sun Bowl and had a great day. He could have been MVP. It was Faison, the lacrosse player. Those four guys could win. CJ Carr could win with the schedule, remember. They'll win 9 games if all 3 guys get hurt and he has to play. They'll win 9 games. Kenny Minchie, the same thing. They need a guy like Riley Leonard to win at A&M and to be able to run the table. But this is the most healthy the QB room has been. We used to watch one of the greatest guys in the world, Brandon Wimbush, miss swing passes. Tyler Buckner, you're like, yeah, but he runs so well. Look at that. Malik Sayer, yeah, but he runs so well. Look at that. Phil Dracovic, he won't throw like that in the fall. Everything was an excuse. Oh, Drew Pine could throw the ball farther than that. Then none of them could. It always went wrong. This is a deep quarterback room, and you don't want to use 4 quarterbacks. You don't want to use 3 quarterbacks, but it's finally healthy, and I am shocked that all 4 are there right now because it's the transfer era.
If you're an opposing team and you're going to be in the quarterback market next year, you're like, okay, they can't run this back again, right? Like,
no, they can't. There's no way Angeli and Minchie can both come back because CJ Carr is coming. Deuce Knight is their recruit. I mean, it's great to have them now. Angeli can actually, I think, graduate early. He was the guy that you thought, well, you are the backup. You have started, and you can graduate early in December. So it makes a lot of sense for him to stay. I think Irish fans are just really happy Kenny Minchie stayed because he has he is quick with arm talent, and until you show what's wrong with you, fans love guys that are quick with arm talent, right?
Absolutely. Yeah. All right. Other than linebacker, is there another position you're really looking forward to watching a position battle with come fall camp?
No, and I'm glad you said linebacker because I made the joke on our podcast. Like, I know Bertrand and Leothal would probably be better, but it's time to watch new guys. How often do you watch 3.5 years of the same linebackers play football at the school? Yeah. So it's fun to have new ones coming in. Kingston Viliamuasa is their number 1 recruit coming in. He'll play at linebacker. He'll earn some time at Mike. The other position battle is Christian Gray and Jaden Mickey at corner opposite Benjamin Morrison. I think Christian Gray is going to beat him out. But Mickey's he's kind of a fan favorite. He went through a lot last year with his mom passing away. He started one game. He got an interception touchdown dedicated to her right there. It was like a nice moment. Everybody likes Mickey. That's a good battle. I don't think there's much of a battle against Rod Hurd coming in from Northwestern. The safety that was there, Adon Schuler, a redshirt freshman, I think they'd have confidence in him playing, but I think it shows how much better Notre Dame is that he's a rotational third safety behind the 2 fifth-year guys. Right tackle is the other position, I guess, is that if you got a flipped offense where there's combination where you have a little bit of a position battle. It's Tosh Baker. He started the Sun Bowl. He struggled. I said to this to you off air. He struggled in 2021 as a freshman trying to play against Wisconsin and Cincinnati, and Notre Dame fans have not let it go since. I don't know if he'll be a great right tackle. Blake Fisher would definitely start over him. And I don't know if he'd flip over to start at left tackle. That's Charles Jagasa will start there, a redshirt freshman. Emil Wagner and Tosh Baker is one position battle. At guard, they kind of have a 3 to make 2. Pat Coogan returns, starting left guard, 13 games. I think Rocco Spindler, who was once the 50th ranked recruit in the country, could beat him out. Had a great blue goal game. He started on the right side last year until he got hurt. And it seems like Billy Schroff, I'm saying these numbers because I want to tie it in, was like the 120th best ranked player in the country for 24/7. He starts on the right side. My issue is I don't know how good the offensive line will be because they don't have Joe Alt and Blake Fisher. But these are the numbers of the guys, how they ranked for 24/7. 46, 57, 95, 123, 169. That's not the 13-game starter, and that's not who the staff believes is the best player, center Ashton Craig. So if you can't get something out of that, other teams would love to have that in their lineup.
Yeah, you go back and you kind of think in your head the other power programs that you beat out to land those guys.
Yes. Yeah.
There's a lot of clay there from which to mold. So
you know how Phil Steele does very highly touted?
Yes.
Their offensive line is going to be ranked higher by Phil Steele than anyone else, and by Notre Dame fans, I think, because you're just going to put very highly touted together, and that's what people are going to look. That's what he's going to look at.
I mean, I think as fans, we're often uncomfortable with uncertainty, but there is comfort in understanding like the likelihood that those numbers do result in something that is passable, good, acceptable.
Yeah, and Joe Alt's better than those guys. Joe, you're going to drop off. They're not as good at left tackle.
Joe Alt went 6th in the draft, 7th.
He was better than who's going to start at left tackle or right tackle this year. I'm comfortable saying it.
Studies show if you're a genetic freak and also come from an NFL family, you may be good at football.
Yes.
Oh man, awesome, Tim. I've really enjoyed this, and we'll definitely follow all the coverage on Irish Illustrated all throughout the year and give the board my best.
I will. Hey, thanks for having me on. Enjoyed it. Enjoyed every time.
Absolutely.
All right. See you, bud.